Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. Today I wanted to talk about a couple things. One is the worst case scenario that could play out in America as I see it. And one is the push to disarm the American civilian. So civilian disarmament. Gavin Newsom has dropped his 27th Amendment, and he's calling for a convention of states. What's interesting is in his text for doing this, in the amendment that he's dropped in California, he actually doesn't want to have a convention of states for any other reason but gun control. So I don't see it going very far because you have to have a plurality of states. So you have to have 2/3 of the states that are willing to do this. And he's doing the state route and not the congressional route because he knows the congressional route probably wouldn't happen. The state route is probably not going to happen either because there's 27 states that are actually constitutional carry. So there's some, I would say there's some level of pro-gun attitude there, and they know that the political repercussions from that would be horrible for them to try to go after. The same time that they are doing this, the ATF, and I've spoke about this briefly, the ATF has introduced a bill, or not a bill, introduced a rule, and they're going to be putting it out later this year, the beginning of next year, where they're going after private gun sales. And they're changing the language of what a federal firearms license person should be, or what should be a person that has an FFL. And where this gets discouraging to me, I mean, we watch all this stuff. We're seeing the weaponization of the Department of Justice by this current administration. And I've seen several things in the interwebs that have been talking about civil war. I still maintain we're kind of in a soft, cold civil war right now anyway, that you're seeing that the bifurcation of the American populace between two factions, and some of us are caught in the middle in that we don't agree 100% with either faction, but we're going to very quickly have to make one. With the indictment, the fourth indictment of a potential political rival to the current administration, one I really don't care to acknowledge. Well, I honestly would vote for him over Biden, and I did last time because, well, the Libertarian candidate really sucked, and the third-party candidates I look at very hard for the last 2-3 elections, presidential elections anyway. But what I see is the breakdown of our culture, kind of. You know, you're seeing these crime waves hit, and, you know, these mass robberies of stores, and it makes me think about those riots and what has been playing around in the mindset of some of the people on our side. One of the things that has me worried about that is that I think that this administration is looking for a reason to crack down hard. And while I'm not a statist, I believe that there will be a time to fight physically because it will become a hot civil war. I don't believe this time is right now. I think for us to win in 2024, we need to ballot harvest, just like the left likes to do. We need to get our legal team in line, and we need to knock on doors and keep going the way we have been, but be more active in what we do in the political spaces. But what has me worried is that living in a rural town, and you know that song by Jason Aldean, even though I'm not a huge fan of Jason Aldean, says try this in a small town. All it's going to take is one person to stand up and start a firefight against these guys, because they're usually dash and grab, so they're not really armed for what they're doing. And if they are, they're very lightly armed. You have one or two people that actually puts down rounds, you know, and I'm not advocating for this. I really want you to understand this. I don't believe that violence is the solution to this yet at all in any way. But how I could see this getting used and weaponized against our side, the 2A community, is someone who's had enough. They've seen the continual failure of the federal government time and time again, and they know they are on the out group, as what they're trying to do is fracture us, and put us in factions so that we can see ourselves as an out group person. Most of us in the 2A, we've been out on the out group anyway, because we like guns. So add any one of these social issues, the trans issue, the criminal issue that they're catch and release is a thing for big cities specifically. And having someone from a small town in one of those larger cities who is in possession of a firearm, not knowing that it's even illegal to own it there because that's how restrictive those cities are, but them to take the law into their hand and to start, like I said, a firefight or something like that. I think the backlash, because of the sheer scale of violence that you would be capable of in that scenario. You know, you're seeing these guys in groups of 50 to 100, and if you fired blindly into those groups, the casualty rate for civilians as well as the people that you're actually wanting to stop, if you were doing this, would be horrendous. And that this would cause a backlash on both sides, and that's what they want. They want us to team up and think that we can't win. You know, they want us to think that there's absolutely no way we can go forward without winning, and I think that's wrong. I firmly believe that if we adopt the strategies that our opposition has used during the last election and stick to those type of things instead of thinking that we're better or that we can do better and we don't do those type of things, there has to be consequences to them. And that would be one of those consequences that I think they would see, is that if we adopted their strategies, we would win. Number one, we have a lot more discipline. We always have. The reason why this criminal element is going on as it is because most of the conservative people, most of the people with character, not just conservatives, libertarians, anyone who had character, has long since left those strong left blue bastions. And that's what they're seeing is, you know, a lot of, I've said this several times and I mean it, that they keep voting for this stuff, let it happen. And you're seeing the decay there. And you're even seeing those people in those camps starting to realize that that is not the way. And they're looking at doing things like refunding law enforcement agencies and enforcing laws and changing some of their tack a little bit. It will take a lot more pressure on them before people do what they need to do. And the only way you do that is you let them hang. So the people in those strong blue cities that keep advocating for those policies, let those policies come home to roost. Let's not let them happen in smaller towns and smaller regions. Because anytime we allow that infiltration to those small areas, we see the repercussions instantly. We see the change in our society that we don't go along with. We have to kind of circle our wagons right now and make sure that our hothead friends aren't the ones that are ready to go out and do something, because that's exactly what they want. They want to make anyone that would have rioted on January 6th or whatever you want to call that, protested on January 6th. They want that type of anarchy to reign, and then they want to have the exact strong opposite reaction where they send in very heavy-handedly a force to combat the supposed enemy. And I think that if we deny them that enemy, that we just build our ground game better. We do this in the 2A all the time. You see us going out and protesting and actually making our words resonate with the current administration and any administration. And that's how we win. Because when we feel rejected and dejected from what's going on in the world, they're winning. We're better than that. You know, I like to say this all the time, God's on my side, who the hell can be on theirs? This is the truth, literally. These people are doing demonic, evil things, and they will be dealt with, whether it's by being voted out of office or being taken care of physically when the time comes. Or we all know what's going to happen when God finally does come. And I'm sorry if that bothers you, but I really don't care either if you think, I am a Christian. I really don't care. We've come to that point in time. You have to have those values and stand behind them and be willing to stand behind them, because people of character have basically left the arena. And if you don't believe me, how many times have we keep wondering, when is somebody going to do something about the corruption we're seeing in D.C.? And how are they not using the law against these guys? Even if you can't impeach Biden, drag him through the process, stall his presidency until the 2024 election. But we have do-nothing people that are being laced up by lobbyists so that they have no reason to do this. And this is where we have to put the pressure on it. I said this many times in this podcast and many times before, that it's time to vote with your dollar and be consistent about it. But it's also time, when you do that you make it pointed. We're winning. And if you don't believe we're winning, look at how hard they're fighting to indict a former sitting president, because they're afraid of him coming back and getting in office. Whether that's good or bad doesn't matter. The fact that they're going after a political rival should put everyone's ears up and make them wonder what the hell is going on here. Because I have never lived through a time where a political rival has been so prosecuted or so persecuted that we're seeing the Department of Justice perverted from what it's supposed to be doing. Justice is supposed to be blind, and that's not how it's working now. It looks like they're directing them. I mentioned in an earlier part of the podcast where I was talking about them going after lawyers. There's never been a time in history that I can remember, and I'm 45 years old, that they went after someone who sought legal counsel. The whole purpose of legal counsel was to give us that bit of freedom so that we could make decisions about facing legal consequences. And for them to go after a RICO case for Donald Trump, and they're going after his lawyers who he sought legal counsel for, and this has already been, he's already been impeached for this, and the impeachment didn't stick for the election denial stuff. And that's not right. So how are we getting to this point where double jeopardy doesn't matter anymore? What if you don't know what double jeopardy means? Is you can't be tried for the same crime twice. If you've already been tried, and that's what that impeachment hearing was, why are they trying to do this again? And I firmly believe that case will get thrown out once it gets to the Supreme Court, because it's was a former sitting president. It's gonna get to that highest court. 2024 is going to be lit. There's going to be a lot of people out there advocating one way or another for whoever. And I'm not sure that the election results will be accepted either way. If Donald Trump won, I don't know that the left would accept it. If Biden wins, I don't know that the right would accept it ever. I don't know that we should. And we're at that point in time where we need to build and harden that ground game to where we know for sure that this is going to go the correct way. Whoever wins, that's up to the cards. That's up to the voter to go out and actually stick their name down, and then go ahead and mark their ballot and do it correctly. A lot of people think that still doesn't matter, that they've got it rigged. If they had it that rigged, why are they fighting so hard against just letting the man run or letting anyone else run? That should tell you enough, because if they had it rigged so much against are in their favor and against us, they wouldn't be fighting so hard. And when we're watching the media, you have to look at state media, or the media now, the typical media like on the TV that everybody watches, or those news sources like CNN or even Fox or OWN or anything like that. You need to look at that as opinion. You don't need to look at that as fact. Unless they've done fact checking, it's probably opinion. You need to be able to form your own opinion. This is something that all of us in the 2A are good at. We are critical thinkers. We always have been. That's why we've not ever chosen one side or the other without looking at what the possible repercussions are. And we've allowed ourselves to be brainwashed by both sides to thinking that one side has an inherently good prospect for us, when that's not the case. What we need to look at is see the good and bad in both situations, in both ideal camps, and then make your selection. Most of us are going to still make the same selection, but then to implement it, nothing works without action. So what are my plans for that? Thinking about the New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union, what the core mission of New Mexico Black Operators Union was and still is to keep New Mexico tactical. I'm behind the blue iron wall. I have to fight for my gun rights every year that the Roundhouse meets, because it never fails, whether it is a Republican governor or it is a Democrat governor. I always am on the front lines with everyone else in New Mexico who is a gun owner, because we consistently have a push to disarm the American civilian. And with the stuff that's coming down, what the ATF is looking at with backdoor gun registration, backdoor red flag laws, backdoor making it illegal to transfer a piece of property to someone, they're looking at trying to get rid of guns in every way they can. And the reason why they want to disarm the human populace, or the American populace, is because the next phase of whatever plan that either side ends up implementing is not good for the American civilian. And that's where we have to look at this from that lens of how do we keep our rights, our God-given rights, away from politicians. These shouldn't be up for debate. This should be, guns aren't political. Why I decided to make this one tonight, to drop tomorrow, was because I had that horrifying thought today, as if one person was in the wrong place and just on the wrong day, and they saw this and they had enough, that could spark that tinderbox that sets the federal government in motion to come after everyone. Because if you do that in such a massive and distinct way, they're going to see that as an absolute threat. And it is. But they're going to see that as a looming, imminent threat instead of one that is an implied threat. Our founding fathers meant this to be an implied threat. They also meant it to be a direct threat. But the implied threat was supposed to be the bigger hammer. The implied threat is, leave us alone. We've had enough. And when you see the statistics on gun ownership, you know that there's a lot more people in our camp. It looks like a lot of people lie on those surveys, whether they have a gun or not. And the reason why they do is because they still have some of those cultural war crap things, beliefs. But they know deep down in their heart of hearts that they're an American and that they have the right to self-defense. They have a right to exist. And to give that power to anyone else negates what our founding fathers ever intended for us. We've landed in that spot where we need to start thinking about this, or at least I have been starting to think about this. I'm sure a lot of my friends who've been of the middle of the road, I would say anarchist types, have thought about this a long time ago. What do you do to get out of this? Can you vote your way out of this? I don't know that we can vote our way out of it, but we can damn sure make it one hell of an effort to make sure that our voice is still heard before we have to ever get to that fourth box. The last thing we want is what we've seen in other countries that we've liberated, so to speak, come home to roost here. And I think that a lot of people are about ready. They're about to that point. They've had enough. And I've seen a lot of my friends as of recent, stand up and say, enough's enough. Well, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to get off your ass and go protest? Are you going to get off your ass and go talk to some people? Are you willing to get off your ass and go knock on a door and advocate for your candidate in a very intelligent way so that you can possibly sway some people? Are you willing to go knock on a door and say, hey, that ballot you just got, let me put that in the mailbox for you, or let me put it in the ballot box for you? Because that's what our opposition is doing, and that's how they've won. And if you don't believe you can win, why are they fighting so hard to oppress one side right now and demonize them? It's very simple. They're afraid of them. They know if they can't control our group of people, the ones that are more libertarian, more freedom-loving people, whether it's Republicans or it's those people I'm talking to, because that's who I am, is the libertarian ANCAP type person that doesn't believe the government has any damn right to be in your business, period. They're afraid of us because they're acting so harshly to oppress something that they see as an absolute threat to what they're trying to push, and it is. Because they picked on the wrong person. They keep tapping on that one shoulder of the guy who really is the big, gentle giant who didn't want to be involved in anything. But eventually he's going to blacken your eye and bloody your nose. And I think how we do that the first time is very important. We do it legitimately. You let them strike first. They've stricken first. They're demonizing us. So now's the time to blacken their eye. How do you do it? Exactly like I said. We develop a ground game. And it's disheartening to see that those allies that we supposedly have in our camp aren't addressing this at all. And we're less than a year away, well, probably about a year away from the election that's 2024, which could be the one. And, every generation, every election, they hype it as the one that could be the one to end all elections. Well, you've seen what's happened since 2020. We're in 2023 now. Do you feel safer? Is your wallet doing okay? Are you able to get as much food as you once would with the same amount of money? Is the economy doing so much better? Does the world feel safer? Because I can tell you from my experience what I'm feeling, absolutely not. I'm seeing the price of just gasoline in a place where we make the stuff in the state going up 15 cents in less than a week. It's now $4.15 is what I've seen in some places here in Farmington. That's unsettling. It's indicative of these stupid policies where they're demonizing hydrocarbons that have been in use forever, and that we are still, while we may look like we're the worst polluter on paper, we're not. China and India are. So we could literally stop using hydrocarbons, using fossil fuels in the United States, and it wouldn't make a damn bit of influence unless China, Russia, and India and the rest of the world does something about their use. But it's demonized. You look at what's been going on with the Inflation Reduction Act. If you actually read the stuff, most of us are happy watching TV, whatever the game is, and they're not willing to look at what's actually being forced on you. The Inflation Reduction Act had nothing to do with inflation reduction. It had everything to do with these stupid Green New Deal ideas that aren't going to work in the United States. It's just not going to work. And when I say that, technology is great. I'm a technologist. And seeing how much technology has advanced over my lifetime, I'm amazed. But the simple fact is, we can't literally make the crap here or in China or anywhere else because we can't get the raw materials to make the shit, period. Never in human history, we would need like 7 times more copper or 15 times something like that is what I've heard from economists to even make an attempt at the Green New Deal. Then there's legislation in the way that says you can't transmit power over so many miles because local utilities own the rights to that. So there would have to be a legislation change before we could ever do that in some parts of our country that it makes sense. Not to mention the fact that mining those materials, lithium, the technology isn't there. It's great, but it's made leaps and bounds. But have you talked to anyone that's had an electric car during the winter? Like a real winter, not like a Texas winter, but something like in northwest New Mexico or Colorado? How that has dramatically, like just the temperature change, dramatically lowers how much range you get from an electric vehicle. Hybrids could be better, but that's not in the wheelhouse because that still uses fossil fuels. And that's bad according to the left. And that's what I think is starting to resonate with people, not the fossil fuel stuff, is that the hypocrisy is being blaringly obvious. When you start saying that a kid who once wanted to be a duck can now choose their gender, and that you're willing to do life-altering surgery to kids, you kind of lose a lot of the people of the United States. With good reason. When you say that we're oppressing people and that we don't need to put them in jail, and then the very next moment these people that you just let out of jail start stealing and robbing stores blind and they're leaving your areas, that resonates with people. And what terrifies me is that I know that there's enough people on our side of the fence that have the resources to do what I'm saying, is that they get pushed just enough and they think no one's listening and that there's no possibility of winning. They're going to react. And that reaction, if it's violent, could trigger a waterfall we're not ready for in the United States. So with that, I leave you with great words, I hope. Great hope, that is. We're winning. And if you don't believe we're winning, look at how hard they're fighting. Right now, they're fighting like the last monkey to try to get on the ark. They're doing everything, pulling out every stop they can because they're losing so badly, and they're losing enough to where they're lying to the American people's face. Janet Yellen came out and said the American economy is the greatest it's ever been. Yet 60% in one survey and 75% in another survey said the exact opposite. So they can continue to lie, but if you can see it in real life, in real time, and you can wake up those people that are always in their slumber and make them see what these people are doing to them, we're going to win. And I know we're going to win because, as I said, God's on our side. Who the hell can be on theirs? Like, share, subscribe, be great.